I'm Steve Nash. I'm the Chief Executive of the Institute of the Motor Industry, which is the automotive industry's professional body. And we're UK-based, but operate in around 50 plus countries around the world.
You've been in this business for decades. You could say that you eat, sleep and breathe engine oil.
I'm certainly an automotive person, yeah, I have been.
What would you say are the biggest challenges the sector faces right now?
Oh, a number of challenges. Skills is a big challenge, but I mean, look, right at this very moment, we've got all of the challenges coming out of the pandemic, the problems that are arising as a result of the conflict in Ukraine. So supply issues are a big thing. Just at a time when we're looking to get people to move into electric vehicles, the manufacturers are actually having to bias, well, they're naturally biasing towards their upper range cars, because if you've only got so many microchips or so many other raw materials to put into cars, what are you going to do? You're going to put them in the most expensive cars, and that's actually to some extent slowing the transition, because we're wanting to move that further down market.
You talk about that transition, and that of course is the transition to becoming carbon neutral, and there's been a bit of a green milestone in the UK, hasn't there, with now over 500,000 all electric vehicles being sold. But it's not just about that, is it? You need a workforce that can support it.
You certainly do. I mean, look, we believe that probably around 2026, the number of electrified vehicles, and I'm including plug-in hybrids and other hybrids in that, will actually overtake internal combustion engines. And then, of course, in the UK, beyond 2030, internal combustion engines are finished, or pure internal combustion engines. But yes, I mean, we have about 250,000 people in the UK who spend every day working on servicing and repairing cars. We're going to need about 90,000 of them to be qualified to work on electric vehicles by 2030. But it takes a big uptick after that, because once the internal combustion engine cars aren't being sold anymore, by 2032 we need 111,000, and it will go on up from there. So there's a big job to do. So this is all happening very fast, and of course the pandemic coming in the middle of it, meaning that for a couple of years it was difficult to train people, means we got some catching up to do.
And also, due to the pandemic, lots of people left the industry, and a lot of them of a certain age aren't coming back, so you've got a gap there.
Well, I mean, there's a number of things happening there. If I just talk for a moment from a UK perspective, first of all, we had Brexit, so we lost an awful lot of people who left the UK as a result of Brexit. But we have had this general situation where the number of people now of work age who are not economically active is at an all-time high. It's about 20% of the working population is not working. In automotive, right now, we have something like 23,000 vacancies in the UK, which is at an all-time high.
And does that change from region to region? We've talked quite a bit about the UK, but you work with the sector across the globe.
Well, the change to electrification is having a huge effect around the world. We do a lot of work in China, for example. In China, they have many thousands of young people who they need to train to have the skills to work on electric vehicles. Whilst they have de facto, they have a big workforce, the level of qualification isn't there at this moment in time, and we're working with the Department for International Trade to take our international qualifications into China, and they have a voracious appetite for it, actually. And not just China, Malaysia, other parts of Southeast Asia. Actually, surprisingly, maybe for a lot of people, we do a lot of work in Germany and other parts of Europe.
I know you spent many, many years there in the UK, and they said that car companies are now becoming more software companies, more technology companies, rather than mobility companies. Do you think that's what we're seeing?
Absolutely we are. I mean, look, the thing is, people think cars are getting simpler, and in one sense they are. I mean, an electric car has got a lot less moving parts than an internal combustion engine car. But at the same time as we're electrifying, where we've got a massive growth of what we call ADAS, or Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. So you have a plethora of these systems on the cars, which means that the garage of the future, even more than today, and it's already happening today, will be about software engineering, programming. I think there was quite a lot of discussion about the fact that people would buy a car which would have heated seats for 3 months, and then they would be turned off, and if you want them for a price, we can switch them back on. You know what I mean? But that's the world we're moving into.
All of the things you talk about require a particular piece of technology, don't they?
Yeah.
Semiconductor chips, and there's a real logjam on those.
When all of the factory shutdowns happened in the pandemic, the auto manufacturers who as I'm sure you know, work on this very much a complete just-in-time sort of principle where everything they need for today literally gets delivered today. They shut off their requirements for semiconductors. Well, that coincided with a big uptake of computers, home entertainment systems, game systems and things, because people were at home. But there have been other shortages as well, aluminium, some of the other raw materials that have had an effect on supply. And of course, we know that the conflict in Ukraine, a lot of manufacturers made their wiring harnesses and things in Ukraine. I mean, they're beginning to find other sources for that. But the microchips is the thing that has hit the headlines.
So what contingencies do companies that operate in the auto sector need to make to protect themselves from these kind of bottlenecks?
That's a really good question, and I think for the last 25, 30 years we've sort of worshipped at the altar of just in time. So bringing supply chain closer, we'll see things like greater adoption of 3D printing to literally make things on site when they're needed.
And which manufacturers are leading the way, do you think, in terms of these innovations, in terms of keeping pace of change? Who would you say, right, they're a shining example, be more like them?
I think it's actually proving easier in many ways for the new entrants to the market to come into the EV space than it is for the existing players who are trying to ride two horses at once. You know, they're trying to keep the old engine going whilst they're building something new. So I think, you know, you've got some really innovative new companies coming out of China, companies like NIO and people like that who make really interesting and good products. And, I think that the industry in 10 years' time will look quite different. The big established players, Volkswagen Group, you would expect, are piling into this, big time. I mean, Herbert Diess, who's just stepped down as their chief executive, who I know from BMW days, did a brilliant job of turning them around and getting them on the EV path across the whole group. Nobody can afford not to now, can they?
So if automotive is becoming more of a mobility story than it is from getting us from A to B, and a manufacturing story, what does that mean for the big auto players?
Today, the top technicians working on new internal combustion engine cars don't necessarily need to know anything about carburetors, because it's old technology. And that's just the way things move. So I think, we're seeing lots of discussions around changes to the distribution model, to the move from franchise dealers to agency models and things like that. It really is. I know it's been said before, and it's a little bit sort of become a little bit of a cliche, but it really is an unprecedented level of change. You would have to go back to the dawn of the motor industry, really, to see that level of change.
Steve Nash, CEO of the IMI, thank you very much.
No, it's been a pleasure.